there's three ways that you can get information: from the LCS, from some other IUOC, or from yourself. Now, you may be passing yourself some information. So you get these three channels: somebody else, the LCS, and you. And there's no way to decide what information is coming from which one of those. There's no tags on those that tells them what the source is. So you just know that you've got information. And here's what the information said. So mostly people get it from they get it from the LCS and from themselves, and it's mixed. If you're really, really good at doing those things, you just get it from the LCS, and it's not mixed. But for most people who haven't practiced for 10 or 15 years trying to get rid of their own channel, then that own channel is often there and part of it. So it's some from the LCS, probably some from yourself. And you mix it all together into a story. And that's why you should always take these things with skepticism. Don't say, well, here's my past life, and that's the way it is. It's just, that's what I got, not that's the way it is. And then you should go do another past life, another time when you're feeling kind of different than you were that time in a different circumstance, and see if you get the same thing. You might get something similar, but different. You tend to interpret things within the knowledge base that you have. Okay. So let's say I send you a bunch of data. You have to interpret that data. How can you interpret in terms of George, the falafel seller, if you've never heard of him? He's not likely to show up as a character. You might just make up a name. Or it might be that you get that name as George. But it'll be harder for you to grab that out of your experience, out of your data bank, if you've never experienced it. Okay. So that's the problem. If you've experienced things, then, oh yeah, I could grab that. Yeah, it was like this and like that and like this other thing. I've read about those, or I've experienced those things. So we have a tendency to fill in with stuff out of our own experience base, which includes everything we've read and saw in movies and whatever else. That's part of our experience. And we tend to color it with our experience, because then it's meaningful to us. We kind of know what that means, what that's like. Whereas if we have no experience at all about that, how do we interpret it? How do we put it into, how do we put it into form so that we can talk about it, so that it's a character if we've never met a person like that? We don't have the raw material to put that into a form, because that's a form that's not in our database. So that's why, it's not just that we're all really terrible at doing this and we make stuff up. It's a reason why we do that. And that's because if we want to express it in terms that we understand, then it has to be expressed in terms of experiences that we've had, or close to experiences that are close to experiences that we've had. Things that aren't that hard for us to imagine. So that's why most of those excursions are kind of limited, because we're limited. But if you were, 65 years old and you'd been a historian all your life and you knew zillions of facts and things about what happened in history, you'd get totally different past life experiences, because you'd have a whole rich vocabulary for expressing them and understanding what they meant. But if you don't have all of that, and most of us don't, then we do the best we can with what we've got, and we get what we get, and that's it. So take it with some skepticism, but in general, it's probably generally correct. It's just the details. The details come out of your own experience, but in general, it's probably got the right gist to it. I'm Tom Campbell. I'm glad you're here. I hope you're enjoying the content. If you do like our content, then you should consider being a Patreon member, because Patreon members get early access to our special content. You will also be able to get your questions answered by me in special Q&A sessions just for the Patreon members. And most importantly, your contribution as a patron member will enable us to produce the content that you're looking for. So thank you. And one of the things you can do with past lives is that's nice is you can go find yourself when you were 3 and 5 and 6 and 7. Anytime that you find that you had a hard time, that maybe you that's where you gained your insecurity, say, or not feeling loved or not feeling good enough, is because somehow your parents pushed you away right at a time when you needed them, and now you felt you were never good enough or unloved or something. And it's just a feeling, and you carry around with you for all the rest of your life. And they just may have been busy at that moment, but you weren't old enough to understand busy. You see, it may be completely innocent on their part, but it made a big impression on your part. And go back and find some of those times where meaningful things happened to you, where you got attitudes and feelings and so on, and revisit those. And then talk to that little girl. Tell her you love her and everything turned out all right, and that she is worth a lot. Give her a pep talk and give her a hug, and it can make a big difference. You can heal a lot of things in your life just by going to find those in the past and healing them at the time they happened. It can be a pretty powerful therapy to do that. So the past lives have their place, and some people use them very effectively. But it's like this: if some lady has a big fear of spiders, and she goes to have her past life, and it bothers her. She sees a spider someplace, and she always screams and runs, and it's embarrassing to walk in somebody's house, see a tiny little spider, and then scream and run. So she doesn't like it. She's embarrassed by it, but that's just the way she is. She has this phobia. So she goes to a therapist. They regress her pet to a past life, and oh yes, there was this big spider, and it dropped down on her and sucked all her blood out, and she died right on the spot. It was a horrible death. Took her an hour to die, and all of it was misery and terrible. So she's got this big thing now about spiders, and she's afraid of them. And the therapist tells her that, and instead of her feeling bad about herself being defective by having this goofy condition, she goes, oh, that's what it is. It was from that past life. Oh, I can understand that. That would frighten somebody about spiders. Now that it's all been kind of adjusted in her mind, she can get over it. The phobia goes away. She doesn't love spiders, but she doesn't have that phobic reaction to them anymore. Now, was that true? Did she really get eaten by a big spider? Or is that just what the LCS sent her because that's what she needed to grow out of the problem? How do you know? I'd bet that most of the time it's what the LCS sent her because that's what she needed to help grow out of that particular problem. So you always take these things with some skepticism. Learn what you can learn from them. Use them how you can use them. But don't worry too much about how accurate it is. For that matter, that story was accurate for that lady, or that it was just given to her by the LCS, what difference does it make? She's not afraid of the spiders anymore like that. It worked. That's what's important. It's helpful. So have that kind of an opinion. That is it helpful? Does it put things into perspective for you? Do you kind of understand your life better for going back in your life experiences? Yes. If that's the case, then keep doing it, and you're doing it very well. If no, well, then try something else or take another approach. You see? So the is it true is the wrong question. Is it helpful is the right question. Is it true? It doesn't really matter. That's not the point. The point is, are you getting something out of it?